It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the city felt calm and ordinary. The sun had just risen over the downtown skyline, and commuters rushed into coffee shops seeking warmth and caffeine before work. Among them stood a sharply dressed professional, calm and composed, waiting patiently in line. No one in the crowded cafe knew that this morning would soon turn into a moment that would shake the entire city administration. A routine stop, a misunderstanding, and one officer's poor judgment were about to spark a chain of events that would cost millions and damage reputations forever. The officer entered the coffee shop responding to a vague call about a suspicious individual. Without gathering clear details, he scanned the room and locked eyes on the quiet man in a tailored suit. The professional was simply scrolling through emails on his phone, unaware he was being watched so intensely. Customers chatted casually, unaware of the tension building near the entrance. The officer approached with authority in his stride, hand resting near his holster. What should have been a calm conversation quickly shifted into something far more serious and unnecessary. "Step outside," the officer ordered firmly, drawing attention from everyone in the cafe. Confused but composed, the man politely asked what the issue was. Instead of explaining clearly, the officer repeated the command with sharper tone. The atmosphere turned awkward, whispers spread across the room, phones slowly began recording. The professional complied peacefully, wanting to avoid escalation. He stepped outside into the crisp morning air, coffee still untouched on the counter. What began as an uncomfortable moment was about to transform into a public spectacle. Outside, the officer questioned him aggressively about his presence in the neighborhood. The professional calmly explained he worked nearby and stopped for coffee every morning. His badge, secured inside his jacket, remained unseen for the moment. The officer demanded identification in a tone that suggested guilt rather than inquiry. Passers-by slowed down to watch. Traffic noise blended with rising tension. The professional handed over his ID without resistance, maintaining composure despite the humiliating tone. The officer scrutinized it with suspicion, as if searching for a reason to justify his actions. Without clear justification, the officer decided to detain him temporarily. The click of handcuffs echoed loudly in the morning air, shocking nearby witnesses. Gasps filled the sidewalk. The professional remained calm but firm, asking again what law he had broken. No clear answer came. The officer insisted he matched a vague description from the earlier call. The situation had escalated beyond reason. What could have been resolved in minutes had now turned into a scene drawing growing attention, cameras recording every second of the unfolding mistake. A small crowd formed as more people pulled out their phones. The professional, though restrained, stood tall and composed. His voice remained steady as he asked for clarification and proper procedure. The officer, now aware of the growing audience, appeared defensive rather than reflective. The call that initiated the stop lacked specific details, yet the detention continued. Witnesses exchanged uneasy glances. Something felt wrong. The morning calm had disappeared, replaced by tension thick enough to silence even the busy city traffic nearby. Minutes later, another patrol unit arrived. The second officer approached more cautiously, reviewing the information on the call log. There was no warrant, no confirmed suspect description, and no immediate threat. The detained man politely requested they check his credentials inside his jacket pocket. After brief hesitation, the second officer retrieved a leather case and opened it carefully. The expression on his face changed instantly. The badge inside carried federal authority. The atmosphere shifted dramatically within seconds. The detained man was a senior federal supervisor working on major national investigations. His presence in the neighborhood was routine and documented. Silence spread among the officers as realization set in. The handcuffs were removed quickly, but the damage was already done. Witnesses had recorded everything. The professional adjusted his suit calmly, though humiliation lingered in his eyes. Respect had replaced suspicion in the officer's tone, but apologies felt delayed and insufficient. Instead of anger, the supervisor requested documentation of the stop. His voice was controlled but firm. He explained the importance of proper procedure and constitutional rights. The second officer seemed embarrassed, while the first struggled to defend his decision. Onlookers began discussing the clear mishandling of the situation. Videos were already uploading online. Within minutes, what happened outside that small cafe was spreading across social media platforms. By midday, local news stations had obtained footage. Headlines questioned the officer's judgment and department training standards. The video showed calm compliance from the detained man and escalating authority from the officer. Public reaction grew intense. Civil rights advocates demanded accountability. The city's leadership realized this was no longer a minor incident. It had become a symbol of something larger, the misuse of authority and failure of proper assessment.
By late afternoon, the police department released a brief statement acknowledging the incident. They described it as a misunderstanding during a routine response, promising a full internal review. However, the public was not satisfied with vague explanations. The video circulating online told a clearer story than the press release. Commentators questioned why escalation happened so quickly without evidence. Legal experts appeared on television panels discussing constitutional rights and unlawful detention. What might have once been handled quietly was now under a powerful spotlight of public scrutiny and growing pressure for accountability. The supervisor returned to his federal office that same day, greeted by concerned colleagues who had already seen the footage. While he maintained professionalism, it was evident the experience had shaken him. Being publicly detained without cause was not just embarrassing, it was deeply troubling. Fellow agents encouraged him to file a formal complaint. Though reluctant to escalate matters, he understood the importance of principle. This was not only about personal dignity, but about preventing similar situations from happening to others in the future. Within days, civil rights attorneys contacted him offering legal support. After reviewing the footage and official reports, they identified multiple procedural violations. The initial stop lacked probable cause. The detention extended beyond reasonable suspicion. The handcuffing appeared excessive given the calm behavior displayed. Each factor strengthened the potential case. The supervisor decided to proceed legally, not out of revenge, but out of responsibility. The message needed to be clear. Authority must be exercised lawfully and fairly, regardless of circumstance. The lawsuit was filed in federal court, alleging wrongful detention, emotional distress, and violation of constitutional protections. News of the filing intensified media coverage. City officials began emergency meetings to assess potential liability. Legal advisors warned that video evidence significantly weakened the city's defense. The officer's body camera footage mirrored what witnesses had recorded. There was little room for reinterpretation. Public opinion increasingly sided with the supervisor, viewing him as composed and dignified throughout the encounter. The police department placed the officer on administrative leave pending investigation. This move, while standard procedure, fueled further debate. Some defended the officer, citing high-pressure decision-making. Others argued that training should prevent exactly this type of escalation. Community leaders organized forums discussing trust between law enforcement and citizens. The incident had evolved beyond a single detention. It became a broader conversation about accountability, bias, and the weight of authority in everyday interactions. As discovery in the lawsuit progressed, internal training records were reviewed. Attorneys found gaps in de-escalation training completion and inconsistencies in field supervision. Emails revealed prior complaints about similar aggressive behavior. While none had resulted in major discipline, the pattern was concerning. These findings strengthened the case further. The city's risk management department began calculating potential financial exposure. Insurance representatives were brought into discussions. What started as a morning coffee stop was now a significant legal and financial threat. During depositions, the officer struggled to clearly articulate why he escalated the encounter. He referenced instinct and suspicion, but could not provide concrete evidence justifying handcuffs. The supervisor's testimony remained calm and factual. He described humiliation, professional impact, and emotional stress caused by the public nature of the detention. His composure during questioning impressed even opposing counsel. Observers noted the stark contrast between measured explanation and uncertain justification. Community activists continued to hold peaceful gatherings demanding reform. Signs emphasized constitutional rights and fair policing practices. The mayor addressed the public, acknowledging concerns and promising transparency. Independent investigators were hired to conduct an external review of department policies. Trust between residents and law enforcement had been shaken. Rebuilding it would require more than statements. It would require structural change. As weeks turned into months, settlement negotiations began quietly.
The supervisor's legal team presented a detailed demand outlining damages, policy reform commitments, and compensation. The city weighed the risks of trial against the certainty of settlement. Legal analysts predicted a jury could award significant damages given the clarity of video evidence. Public pressure added urgency to resolution discussions. Eventually, mediation sessions were scheduled. Both parties entered with prepared arguments and documentation. The supervisor's stance remained consistent: accountability, reform, and fair compensation. The city's attorneys aimed to minimize financial impact while avoiding prolonged litigation. Discussions stretched across multiple sessions. The numbers debated reflected not only financial loss, but reputational cost and public trust.
News outlets reported that the potential settlement could reach millions. Citizens questioned how taxpayer funds would be used. City council members debated oversight responsibilities. Transparency meetings were broadcast live. Residents demanded answers about training improvements and supervisory accountability. The incident had become a defining issue for local leadership. During mediation, video footage was replayed repeatedly. Each viewing reinforced how quickly the encounter escalated. Experts testified on proper detention standards. Policing consultants highlighted missed opportunities for simple conversation instead of force. The visual evidence remained powerful and undeniable. After intense negotiation, a settlement figure was reached: $5.6 million. The amount reflected legal damages, emotional distress, and agreement on departmental reforms. While costly, officials concluded trial risks were greater. The agreement included commitments to enhanced training and policy revision. The announcement sparked mixed reactions. Some viewed the settlement as justice served. Others criticized the financial burden on the city. Editorials emphasized that prevention costs less than litigation. Public discourse remained focused on reform rather than outrage. The officer ultimately resigned before final disciplinary review concluded. His departure marked a quiet end to his tenure. The department announced new oversight measures and mandatory de-escalation certification programs for all officers. Training sessions were redesigned with emphasis on constitutional standards and communication skills. Scenario-based exercises were implemented to reduce unnecessary escalation. Supervisors received additional accountability responsibilities. The supervisor, while compensated financially, emphasized that reform mattered most. In interviews, he spoke about dignity, professionalism, and equal treatment under the law. His measured tone continued to earn respect nationwide. National media covered the settlement as an example of accountability in action. Legal commentators analyzed its implications for future cases. Other cities reviewed their own procedures proactively. Community trust began gradual repair through forums and transparent updates. Police leadership met regularly with residents to rebuild dialogue. While skepticism lingered, communication improved. City budget adjustments were required to cover the settlement. Financial committees evaluated insurance structures and risk prevention strategies. The cost served as a stark reminder of consequences. Policy manuals were rewritten with clearer detention thresholds. Officers were instructed to document articulable suspicion explicitly before escalation. Compliance audits were scheduled regularly. Civil rights organizations praised the resolution, but urged continued vigilance. They emphasized that systemic change requires sustained effort beyond one case. The cafe where it all began quietly returned to normal operations, yet regular customers remembered the morning that changed city policy. For the supervisor, routine coffee runs resumed. However, awareness of vulnerability never fully disappeared. The experience left a permanent imprint. Law schools began referencing the case in constitutional law discussions. It became a teaching example about lawful detention standards. Police academies incorporated footage into training modules, highlighting both mistakes and corrective lessons. Public surveys months later showed gradual improvement in trust metrics. Transparency efforts appeared to have measurable effect. The mayor cited the reforms during re-election debates, emphasizing lessons learned and corrective leadership. Financial analysts calculated long-term cost savings from improved training, reducing future lawsuits. Community oversight boards gained expanded authority to review misconduct complaints independently. Community oversight boards gained expanded authority following the settlement agreement. City officials approved new measures granting independent investigators the power to review complaints, access body camera footage, and recommend disciplinary action without interference. This change aimed to restore public confidence by ensuring transparency beyond internal department reviews. Residents who had long demanded accountability felt cautiously hopeful. Public meetings were scheduled regularly to provide updates on reform progress. Though trust had been shaken, these structural adjustments demonstrated a willingness to learn from costly mistakes and prevent similar incidents from occurring again in the future. The supervisor chose not to pursue media fame despite widespread national attention. After a few carefully measured interviews focused on constitutional rights and professionalism, he stepped back from the spotlight. He emphasized that the case was never about personal revenge, but about principle and equal protection under the law. Colleagues admired his restraint and dignity throughout the ordeal. Returning to his federal responsibilities, he continued leading investigations with the same discipline and composure. Privately, however, the experience served as a reminder that even authority figures are not immune to unjust treatment. Internal audits conducted months later revealed measurable improvements in officer conduct documentation. Reports showed increased clarity when officers articulated reasonable suspicion before initiating stops. Supervisors were now required to review body camera footage more consistently to ensure compliance with policy standards. Training participation rates reached full completion across the department. While no reform could guarantee perfection, data indicated positive momentum. City leadership published these findings publicly, understanding that transparency was critical in rebuilding credibility. The lessons learned from one wrongful detention were slowly transforming operational culture within the department. Reform advocates remained engaged even after headlines faded. Community leaders stressed that sustained oversight was essential to prevent complacency. Workshops were organized to educate citizens about their constitutional rights during police encounters. Dialogue sessions between officers and residents encouraged mutual understanding and empathy. Though skepticism lingered among some community members, consistent communication began bridging divides. The settlement had sparked awareness that extended beyond financial consequences. It had ignited a broader civic conversation about responsibility, fairness, and the delicate balance between public safety and individual liberty. City officials publicly acknowledged that trust, once damaged, cannot be restored overnight. During council meetings, leaders admitted mistakes were made and pledged long-term commitment to reform. Budget allocations were adjusted to prioritize advanced training and oversight resources. The financial loss of $5.6 million remained a visible reminder of what happens when procedure fails. Taxpayers demanded careful management moving forward. While some criticized leadership for allowing the incident to occur, others recognized that transparent corrective action represented progress. Accountability, though expensive, demonstrated the city's responsibility to its citizens. Universities and legal institutions began referencing the case during constitutional law lectures. Professors used publicly available footage to analyze probable cause standards and lawful detention boundaries. Students debated the ethical responsibilities of law enforcement and the consequences of procedural shortcuts. The case evolved into a real-world teaching tool, illustrating how quickly authority can be misapplied. By studying the event academically, future lawyers and public servants gained deeper understanding of civil rights protections. Education became another indirect outcome of the costly mistake, ensuring the lessons would influence generations to come. National policing conferences cited the settlement as a catalyst for reform discussions. Chiefs from various cities examined their own department policies, aiming to prevent similar incidents. Panels addressed implicit decision-making, communication tactics, and de-escalation strategies. Experts emphasized that professionalism begins with respect and careful assessment. The incident's ripple effects extended far beyond city limits, encouraging proactive evaluation nationwide. While no department is immune from human error, acknowledging vulnerabilities allowed agencies to strengthen safeguards. The story transformed from controversy into a blueprint for improvement. Over time, the narrative shifted from outrage to reflection. News coverage decreased, replaced by reports highlighting policy updates and oversight milestones. Residents who once felt anger began observing tangible changes in officer behavior during community interactions. Body cameras, once seen as controversial, were now widely accepted as accountability tools. The department's public image slowly stabilized. Although memories of the incident remained vivid, progress softened its sharpest edges. What once symbolized division gradually represented an opportunity for institutional growth. For many citizens, the memory of that morning outside the coffee shop remained powerful. It reminded them that constitutional rights must be protected vigilantly. Conversations at community gatherings often referenced the importance of calm dialogue over rapid escalation. Parents spoke to their children about knowing their rights and maintaining composure during encounters with authority. The event became woven into local civic awareness. Even as daily life resumed its rhythm, the lesson endured quietly in collective memory. The financial impact of the settlement continued influencing city policy decisions. Budget planners calculated how improved training investments could reduce future legal payouts. Risk management strategies were strengthened to identify problematic patterns early. Officials recognized that proactive accountability costs far less than reactive litigation. The $5.6 million figure was repeatedly cited during fiscal discussions as motivation for reform. It served not merely as a penalty, but as a financial warning against complacency. Responsible governance demanded prevention over correction. What began as an ordinary coffee purchase ended as a defining moment for the city. A single decision, made without sufficient justification, triggered legal consequences, financial loss, and institutional reform. The $5.6 million settlement represented more than compensation. It symbolized accountability. Authority carries immense responsibility, and misuse, intentional or careless, comes at a price. Through policy changes, community engagement, and transparent leadership, the city sought to rebuild trust. The incident proved that even costly mistakes can produce meaningful change when confronted honestly and corrected decisively.